get on fire rolls.
Yeah.
So I don't want to interrupt you.
No, it's
I'm actually like listening. I'm like, oh yeah.
No, interrupt me.
Welcome to TotalCast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path.
Alex,
We're back.
I've read this really interesting article, and I wanted us to talk about it because I know when you exchange your data on Turtle, there's Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And there was this article, and it was done by Andrew Bailey. Shout out to him. And it is why Bitcoin needs philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
and something that he says that I want you to speak to. He says when computer scientists research Bitcoin, Bitcoin is software after all. And because Bitcoin uses incentives to shape human behavior, it also makes sense that economists should study it too. Mm-hmm. And so he gets into where there should be a philosophy behind it, an understanding. You know, we have philosophy on money, hard currency. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of us have different philosophies. In fact, it's points that's led to us to where, you know, if you look at, I collect silver dollars from Vienna.
Yeah.
You know, so it has Mozart on there. Of course, you know, we put our culture and our heritage on those. I just bought some silver coins from the U.S. Mint for World War II, you know, and so now we've got fighter jets on there and, you know, all that. So why doesn't Bitcoin have a philosophy? I know it's just a software, but
actually, if you read the original paper by Satoshi Nakamoto, whatever his last name is, it was almost designed first with philosophy. You got to remember, before we do anything, even you or me, we have a general idea about how we want to live our life, right?
Right.
We have values, hopefully, that we want to live by that would help shape and define us as a human being and also how we're seen by others. And when someone goes to design a piece of software, it needs that sort of philosophy, because if it lacks a philosophy, if it lacks a testing idea of life in general about how we should live, then what's the point of actually creating this thing? If there's no philosophy behind actually trying to better our evolution, then there's no point of using this sort of tool. And Bitcoin, even the idea of blockchain, was designed with a philosophy where someone felt that it was more important for us as individuals to take responsibility over what we value rather than to let a small few decide for us what that value is. And that philosophy gets tested every single day. Mm-hmm. It gets tested in how many people actually adopt the use of Bitcoin to use it in transactions for everyday purchases, for an exchange of value. It is looked at for how we use it and actually philosophically push it into our current financial system, and uses it as an adjutant to actually change the model of finance into a decentralized financial model. It's saying, do we, you and me, Jason, recognize value that we can interact with and share upon and not have to have a third party come in and moderate it for us? Can you and I, do we philosophically, are we good enough people with our morals and values to say, this is what I think it is. You've agreed upon that value. No one else has to come in and do it for us. We're willing, through this system of trustless transaction, can we roll with that? Is it possible for society to function with a store of value like that? And so when you're looking at the design of Bitcoin and its fundamental base, which is blockchain, that trustless decentralized ledger, just saying Bitcoin is just another piece on top to say, okay, here's a value on top of that ledger, right? But it's really a philosophy of removing the middleman. That is the total philosophy of Bitcoin.
I liken Bitcoin and blockchain to the French Revolution. So you had Voltaire and then you had the guillotines.
Yeah.
And what were the guillotines for?
The guillotines are for, guillotine
Yeah.
is for... it's at a nice angle, probably 60 degrees. It's got a lot of weight, right?
Yes.
And it's for just cutting heads off very quickly. It's an efficient form of execution. If you didn't drop it fast enough, you'd have to drop it twice.
And that's
I know that the Vatican used these. There's quite interesting photos of them. What's the plaza out in front of the Vatican?
Oh, yes.
There's the Vatican Guard. You can see them just cutting people's heads off. They have photos, so it couldn't be that long ago.
Oh, that's funny. But when you look at this revolution, and I believe that's what's happening with decentralization, and chopping the heads off of these ancient control mechanisms.
The French Revolution is interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up. The French Revolution was about, these are the values of us as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
We demand that the government recognize those values and the government protect those values for us.
I'm an individual,
but there's a key difference here, okay? And I'm going to show you the key difference between the French Revolution and what's happening now, okay? And what that defining line is. The philosophy is that this is me. These are my natural human rights. You need to protect them. Okay? Do you see how I'm pointing the finger?
Yes.
So what am I doing? Where does the responsibility fall on?
The government.
The government. Okay. We're not following your rules. I don't want to be responsible for managing this. I'm going to give it to you, but I'm going to tell you what I want. Okay? And I'm going to create an uprising. I'm going to do all this stuff. That's your French Revolution. Okay?
Yes.
Bastille falls. Let's look at Bitcoin. These are the values we want to cherish. Values that the same ones that were seen in the French Revolution. I'm a human being. I want balance, equanimity, sovereignty over these things, right? But the government's not responsible. I'm responsible.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay? So the defining difference is responsibility. Who's going to care for that responsibility? And again, that's the philosophical line for using Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I love what he said here. He said, well, philosophy often deals philosophy. I had too much. I'm drinking a monster,
Falafel, yeah.
Some mango monster thing somebody gave me. Well, philosophy often deals with normative questions, questions not just about what is, and this is great, but also questions about what should or ought to be, what is good or bad, just or unjust.
Yeah. So it's philosophy is like, how do you live the best possible life? And if we look at what Bitcoin is doing, it's asking, hey, are you willing to be responsible?
Yes, 100%.
For so long, you've passed off your responsibility to these third parties, right? This few, and you've given them great power. And you've complained that you've lacked power and fairness and things are unjust. And there's no equitability in the financial system and all these other things. Now it's saying, are you willing to take that responsibility? Here is a tool.
Yeah, you're not fighting Brad Pitt and Troy.
No.
That's just the minute you step out of line, he's just gonna kill you in 2 seconds.
The question is,
everything's been put on a level playing field.
It's level playing field.
Because if you take responsibility, the board all around you, that chessboard that you want to play on all around you has already been set up to the best of its ability at this time.
Yeah, and it's completely fair.
It's completely
fair. You
fair.
choose and now you have the ability to choose if you want to interact with it.
Yes.
But you have to be responsible. The only person you're fighting now is yourself. You fight your own habits. It's interesting when you look at the value of Bitcoin, not against the US dollar, but Bitcoin itself and its adoption. It's almost like a barometer for how we as human beings are evolving.
Yes. Yes.
And I hope that takes to people, right? That the intrinsic value of it is a barometer of our growth as a decentralized society. So philosophically, the more we use it, the underlying technology of blockchain and adopting Bitcoin into our everyday services, that's a barometer of our own growth and us taking responsibility back for what we should have had responsibility on in the first place.
Yeah, and he said something here. You might worry that philosophy is more about questions than answers. But I like that statement because I like when a new technology comes out and we begin to question it. Mm-hmm. And that whole process of, like right now you have a lot of hedge funds and stuff like that trying to get returns. So and we had talked about this before, but they're buying Bitcoin, and riding this wave. And there was an article that came out today. It's going to be at 150,000, so I think it's at over 15. Yeah. It's like you said, it's, are we willing and are governments willing to step in and say, let's do this for the people.
That's the real deal. That's the sauce, right?
Right.
No one cares if it's worth 150,000 US dollars. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
All you're doing is moving your Bitcoin back and forth from how I'd say Bitcoin is the Ferrari.
Yes.
And now you're going back to the horse and buggy working with the US dollar. This debt-loaded, nasty, useless thing.
To me, Bitcoin will be the standard like gold is.
It will be the standard, right?
Yeah.
It's just how we perceive value. And Jason, do you value yourself enough to use Bitcoin? Because when you use the US dollar, you're valuing your government.
Yes.
And you're asking your government to be responsible for what is a natural human right. And we've seen governments all over the world that skip that responsibility anyway and completely step on human rights.
Yes.
So it's an economic stance. It's a philosophical stance of your own moral and characteristic development.
Yes.
It's an evolutionary stance of who we are as a society. And it's a stance on saying, I just want to be responsible.
Yeah. And he goes in, he gives a good, it gives a good analogy in conclusion to this. He says, it secures your financial privacy, and financial privacy is good. He said, it's the same thing as if you're talking to a friend or you're talking to your doctor. Now you may share some things with your doctor, but when you're with your friend, you're going to share the most intimate things.
Yeah. And you'll share information about how shitty your doctor is.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, whenever you look at Bitcoiners, and he says this, and I love this, it's like right here, Bitcoiners want more than just to get rich. They also want to make the world better.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. People that want to get rich will exchange it for Forex.
Yeah.
They'll do their swaps.
But how long has it been
currency
about
pairs.
Getting rich?
Has getting rich ever benefited anybody?
No, we're seeing it now.
Does winning the lottery benefit lottery winners?
No.
99% of the time it doesn't. Right? But if you can elevate everybody 0.5%, 1% elevation, you have dramatically changed 7.5 billion lives, or 8.1, whatever the number is. That's something quite substantial. And now everybody has the ability to interact. Everyone has the ability to be responsible. We're trying to elevate the world by making it inclusive, but not a forced inclusion, right? It's an inclusivity of choice. Do you want to be a part of this? No one's forcing you to use the tool. You're forced to use the US dollar by our government.
Yes.
You're forced to do it. You're forced to pay your taxes in it. You have no choice in the matter. And now something's come along that is, frankly, something that is a better mirror of what it means to be a human being, even in the financial aspect, as a function of measurement. Do you want to go use that? And the choice is there now here for you to do so.
Even blockchain alone, if we'd have voted with our phones with facial recognition,
we're doing. I'm saying right here now with Turtle, we'll get verified identities on here. I'll tie it in with all the DMVs, whatever it might be. And you're just going to vote instantaneously through your phone.
And it would be, you wouldn't have had the issues that we had.
There'd be no issues. It just be everybody can vote from home.
So that
you don't have to go to a voting center. Why do we have to be so archaic?
No. Why do we have to send in a paper ballot and then have people count paper ballots? It was like the other day I saw we had, 5 million votes in Georgia?
Yeah.
And there's 3.5 million people. Look it up on Wikipedia. There's 3.5 million people.
Listen, that stuff is just nonsense.
And I have no care whether it's Trump or Biden. I'm not saying
I don't care.
that.
I'm just talking about the system in general, how things operate. That's what I look at.
Yes, yeah.
I look at for efficiencies and making humans efficient and good people.
Yes, yes.
What's so hard about that? And people use Twitter for polling.
I know, yeah.
What the heck? But that's the gig. But I think from a philosophy, I don't want to beat a dead horse because I like horses, and I wouldn't want to beat their dead body because that's not
you were
good
just
either.
on one.
Yeah, I was riding a horse recently.
Yeah.
Just to get into that, I don't like I think it's an English thing to have the riding crop in the mouth. I don't know what it's called. That bar. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't do that to my dog. I'll put a gentle lead around the dog to help guide its face. The dog's still going to make a choice where it wants to go. I'm not going to here. I'm not going to be like the U.S. government forcing me to use the dog.
Besides that? I've never.
There's a couple different options for riding a horse, depending on how you want to actually gate the face to move it,
Right.
right? For control.
Well, didn't they used to just use their legs? I know Native Americans.
Yeah, of course.
They would just kind of guide them with,
It's,
like a little pressure here. A little pressure
We're
there.
getting philosophical here, but
If we look
at over time how society has kind of changed and how we've tried to get Mother Nature to bend to our will, I think just looking at how the English changed horse riding.
Yes.
Look at the Mongolians
Yes.
and how Genghis Khan, with a bow and arrow and these very wild horses, managed to rule a very large body of land in Asia. And they didn't have those things just ripping through the horse's mouth. No, they're grabbing the hair, pushing with the legs, getting it to turn. There's more of a relationship with nature.
Yes.
Right? And I think we're skipping that relationship even with ourselves by not adopting a technology like Bitcoin.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Shout out to Hardcore History. The Genghis Khan episodes are like one of the best things I've ever heard in my life.
I didn't even know this.
They're one of Hardcore History. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
This guy, I want to say his name is Dan. Everybody's.
Well, we got to
quote
give
me
him a
wrong.
big shout out right
We need.
now.
Oh, he gets millions of downloads. It's Dan Carlin, I think. Let me make sure. Yeah, Dan Carlin. It's called Hardcore History. These are 3.5, 4 hour episodes.
Oh, wow.
And he'll have 4 or 5 of them, like on Genghis Khan. So that's 12, 15 hours. And you will think you listen for 30 minutes.
That's amazing.
And it's him.
Wow.
It's him talking. But it is just he mesmerizes you with all the facts that he brings to light.
Love that.
Yeah. And so I've never learned so much in such a short period of time. This podcasting, what we're doing, decentralization.
Yeah, what we're doing is akin to Bitcoin of the mouth.
Yes. Yeah, it's the same.
Mouth coin.
You could start a new coin.
It's like
Everybody
Dogecoin.
starts
It's like
coins.
Dogecoin, but it's
We have to start.
mouth
We
coin.
should start Turtle Coin.
Yeah, turtle coin. That's what we need another ICO. Great.
Well, we've bored you guys long enough. We'll
Yeah.
we'll peace out.
Thank you, everybody.
Philosophy.
Thank you for listening to TartleCast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path. What's your data worth?